One of my patients asked about how to avoid the muscle pain after exercise. This guy was newly introduced to exercise, I believe since August. That would be about 5 months now. And he has increased quad size and quad strength tremendously. He's also working on upper body. So he's doing it to get healthy but also put on size, muscle mass. And my suggestion was that when you exercise, you have to know how to exercise, number one. If you're doing exercise in the wrong way, you can actually damage muscle and cause pathology. Exercise technically damages muscle, but it does it in controlled amounts so that the muscle will be stimulated to grow for the next time you expose to the same trauma. That's what bodybuilding is all about. So you'll hear information on isometric exercise, isometric contraction, hear information on eccentric contraction, and you'll have information on concentric contraction. Most of the information out there on injuries says that with eccentric contraction, that's when you extend the length of the muscle and contract at the same time, you'll have the highest amount of damage. Isometric exercise is the old-fashioned way of pulling and pushing with no change in muscle length, which is typical for yoga. Yoga, you sit here, you hold with proper position, and you just breathe. That's why yoga usually has low injury, unless you do some of the crazy poses in hot yoga, or you get pushed too hard by an instructor who's not listening, and I don't agree with that, but for the majority of yoga teachers, most of the movement is isometric, where you contract and hold, and then you change positions, and then you get into the new position, you contract and hold again. And I really think yoga is more based on working on breath exercise while you're not freaking out about the movement, and then having grounding or increasing serotonin like we tried to do with the first. If you've seen any of my videos on relaxation, meditation, that's what we try to do, is increase serotonin, decrease epinephrine, improve on inflammation, and get a better or healthier lifestyle. So isometric is stability, holding positions and not having too much injury. Eccentric is extending, and concentric is the typical, concentric contraction is a typical contraction that shortens, or where you have muscle contraction while you're shortening the muscle bundle, like the bicep. So knowing that, and every joint goes through different. If I contract the bicep during a bicep curl, I'm actually eccentrically lengthening the tricep. So the thing is, without getting too confused about one versus another, the bottom line with delayed onset muscle soreness, or the pain that you'll have within 48 hours after exercise, if you are doing things properly, you shouldn't hurt. Or there'll be a little bit of discomfort, but not much. You should be able to continue on with life, continue on with doing your usual job, and usually I'd say getting back into an exercise routine within 48 hours to 72 hours. Might not be the same muscle group or body or regional area, but you should be able to get right back in. If you can't, and you've been exercising for a couple months, you're probably attacking your muscle, or you probably need some guidance from a physical therapist. But sometimes what I'll also suggest is hydration. A lot of Americans don't take advantage of the thirst sensation, and they postpone drinking fluids. There's a lot of lactic acid that gets built up in muscle groups after holding positions, whether it's yoga or whether it's exercise. Sometimes what happens is, if you hold a position for a short amount of time, you can keep that position, and you might be able to maintain, but the muscle starts to develop a little bit of lactic acid. When it starts to develop lactic acid, like now, that was only a couple seconds, but I can feel a little bit of lactic acid in the lats and in the biceps. If you don't listen and let go, then you get to the point of either cramping or too much lactic acid. And it's fine. The body has this thing called a Cori cycle, where it pushes the lactic acid from the muscle into the liver, converts it back to energy, and then you're great. But if you have no fluid inside you, or you're on creatine, which usually dehydrates as well, I believe, then the lactic acid stays in the muscle. If it stays in the muscle, tissue damage, at least a pain sensation. So a lot of the pain fibers, the free nerve endings that go into muscle fibers, they'll be stimulated because of the presence of lactic acid in the muscle or around it, and you'll have their constant sensation of pain. And if you have pain, usually what the body does is it shortens muscle fibers. And when you shorten muscle fibers, you stay stiff, so that when you try to move the muscle, it causes more pain and then damage. So you can see the idea about hydration. I think massage therapy is very important. That's where I think yoga helps with flexibility, stretching, and if you can't get into yoga, then you have somebody apply. Physical therapists can do it in the form of manual physical therapy, or a massage therapist. Sometimes I'll put needles in and have energy move through Chinese meridians, and that's a little bit more ancient as far as how to heal, but it does make people feel a little better. So there are anti-inflammatories you can use too, over-the-counter Advil or prescription anti-inflammatories speed up the inflammation that you'll get, but be careful. I don't know what your medicines are, and if you have a side effect to anti-inflammatories, or if there's an ulcer issue or a reflux issue. But if you're taking anything like Pepcid, Protonix, Prilosec, Prevacid, Tagamet, Zantac, then you might not want to do an anti-inflammatory. You might want to come see me or one of my colleagues just for advice. There's topical anti-inflammatories that you can use. Salicylic acid is a common anti-inflammatory, but it doesn't really, I can't find it except for in shampoos to apply through the skin. There's compounding anti-inflammatories you can pay a high price for. But I really think if you stick to the fluids, stick to the proper knowledge of how to exercise, when to stop, when to get back into it, how far to push, then and then eating properly, having processed foods after exercise or a big burger and steak, I think it's a no-no. I'm a more plant-based exerciser and athlete. I think even with eating plant-based or full vegetarian, I still believe that I can get enough protein compared to what I used to eat when I was a kid. So I don't think there's any, you should see the Engine 2 diet. Rip Esselstyn has really promoted this exercise that he calls Plant Strong. I think it's fantastic. So some of my athletes who just are used to eating steak after or right before a game, I'd say read on what Rip can do, and Rip Esselstyn can show you in the Engine 2 diet. Otherwise, worst case scenario is if you have a lot of pain, you got to see one of us and get pain control medicines, but that's usually the last stage. Hopefully this helps with a little bit of how to get rid of that delayed onset muscle soreness. But again, it's considered normal with a lot of people who exercise. Probably common when you first start exercising, but if you're getting into your 4th, 5th, 6th month, you might have to have guidance instead of just looking on online on how to do exercises. You might have to have special guidance on how to apply it to your body type. Not all exercises that are out there are for all body types. Football players don't do the same exercises as basketball players, and they don't do the same exercises as ballerinas. So get some help, do the research, listen to your body, and get into proper nutrition.